I never imagined I'd witness a neighborhood power struggle escalate to someone being flung onto my front lawn, but that's precisely what unfolded last weekend. Before my peaceful Sunday afternoon morphed into what my neighbors now call the incident, I suppose I should rewind to the beginning. I've lived in Pinecrest Meadows for about 3 years, a textbook suburban enclave with neatly trimmed lawns, matching mailboxes, and, of course, the INEVY Table Homeowners Association. For the uninitiated, a homeowners association is like a small-scale government for your neighborhood, dictating everything from the shade of your shutters to the height of your grass. Leading ours with an unyielding grip was Linda Harper. Linda was the type who thrived on the sliver of authority her role granted. In her mid-50s, sporting that short, angled haircut you're likely envying, she cruised the streets in her silver SUV like a hawk scouting for infractions. I'd mostly flown under her radar, keeping my lawn at a precise 4 inches and never daring to install a garden gnome. That all changed when my Uncle Thomas came to stay with me for a few weeks. Uncle Thomas was my favorite relative, sharp, witty, and blessed with a calm, reflective nature that made him a joy to be around. He also happened to be the state attorney general, though he rarely brought it up unless it naturally fit the conversation. He was on a brief sabbatical, seeking a quiet spot to work on a book about constitutional law. The trouble kicked off on a Tuesday. I got home from work to find a violation notice slapped on my door. Apparently, Uncle Thomas had shifted my recycling bin to the side of the house instead of stashing it in the garage, a blatant breach of Homeowners Association Rule 47B. The fine was $50. I sighed, brought the notice inside, and showed it to Uncle Thomas, who arched an eyebrow but said, "Don't worry about it. I'll handle the fine. My mistake." He wrote a check that night, and I dropped it in the association's mailbox the next morning on my way to work. 2 days later, another notice arrived, claiming the fine hadn't been paid and had jumped to $75 with late fees. I frowned, knowing full well the check had been delivered. I called the association office and, unsurprisingly, got Linda on the line. "We never received any payment," she said in that patronizing tone that seems universal among homeowners association presidents. "And I personally saw the recycling bin out again yesterday." "That's impossible," I replied evenly. "My uncle wrote a check, and I dropped it off myself. The bin's been in the garage since Tuesday night." "Well, I have no record of a check," Linda said, her voice using fake politeness. "I took a photo of the violation yesterday. I can email it to you if you'd like." I asked her to send it. Sure enough, 10 minutes later, I got a picture of a blue recycling bin, except it wasn't mine. My bin has a small dent on the lid from a neighbor's fender bender. This one was spotless. I called Linda back. "That's not my bin in the photo," I pointed out. "Mine has a dent on top." "Are you accusing me of lying?" Linda's voice shot up, dripping with theatrical outrage. I could almost hear her clutching her necklace through the phone. "No, I'm saying there's been a mistake. That bin isn't mine, and the check was definitely delivered." "Mistakes happen," she said, sounding anything but convinced said, "but the fine still stands. And now it's due law 100 for argumentative behavior." My pulse quickened, but I kept my cool. "There's no rule in the bylaws about fines for argumentative behavior," I said, silently thanking Uncle Thomas for urging me to read the bylaws when I moved in. "Check Section 12, Paragraph 3, Linda shot back smugly. "The board reserves the right to impose penalties for uncooperative homeowners." I checked Laterno such rule existed. This tug-of-war dragged on for a week. Linda claimed the second check Uncle Thomas wrote never arrived, and new violations kept popping up: a flower pot in the wrong shade of clay, a garden hose visible from the street, a car in my driveway that wasn't mine, it was Uncle Thomas's. The fines piled up to overdue law 500. Uncle Thomas stayed impressively unruffled, musing one evening, fascinating case study in the misuse of power within quasi-governmental bodies, as he scribbled in his notebook. I wasn't nearly as zen about it. The situation boiled over on Sunday afternoon. Uncle Thomas and I were sipping iced tea on the porch, chatting about his book, when a silver SUV screeched to a stop in front of my house. Linda stormed out, trailed by a man in what looked like a security guard uniform, though I'd never seen security in our neighborhood before. "This is the house," she proclaimed, pointing at my property like a general rallying her troops. She strode up my walkway, the guard in tow. "I'm here to collect the outstanding fines," she announced, "plus a $200 enforcement fee." "Good afternoon, Linda," I said, strevying for CIVY Lighty despite my growing irritation. As I've explained, we sent 2 checks you claim not to have received. I'd be happy to discuss this at the next meeting. No more discussions. Linda cut in, her face glowing with the thrill of confrontation. You've been in violation for weeks. The board has authorized collection measures. Uncle Thomas set down his tea. Excuse me, he said in his steady, courtroom-honed tone. I'm not sure what collection measures mean, but I should inform you. Are you the unauthorized tenant? Linda interrupted, jabbing a finger at him. Section 8 of the bylaws states all residents must be approved by the board. I'm not a tenant. I'm a guest, Uncle Thomas replied calmly. Nothing in the bylaws prohibits guests from staying with homeowners. He's right, I chimed in. I've read them thoroughly. Linda's eyes narrowed. The board recently amended that rule, she said, though I knew no such vote had occurred. Now, about those fines. Perhaps we should pause, Uncle Thomas suggested. There seems to be confusion. I'm Thomas Reynolds, and I don't care who you are, Linda snapped. The fines are now due $750 with the enforcement fee payable now. We'll need to verify these violations first, I said. As I've pointed out, some were wrongly attributed to my property. Linda's face turned a startling red. Fine, we'll place a lien on the property instead. She turned to the guard. Mark the house for lien processing. The guard, looking unsure, pulled out an orange sticker. That would be illegal without due process, Uncle Thomas said, standing. A lien requires proper procedure. Do it now, Linda barked. The guard hesitantly approached my door with the sticker. Uncle Thomas stepped forward. I'm going to have to ask you not to do that, sir. There's no legal basis. What happened next was surreal. The guard, visibly uneasy but obeying Linda's escalating commands, pulled out a taser. Sir, please step back, he said, his voice shaky. This is entirely inappropriate, Uncle Thomas said, standing his ground but not advancing. I'm Thomas Reynolds, the State Attorney General. Tase him if he interferes. Linda shrieked. The guard later revealed to be on his first day and misled by Linda about his authority fired. The prongs hit Uncle Thomas in the chest, sending him crumpling onto my lawn. I dialed 911 while recording the scene. Linda, suddenly aware she'd crossed a line, backtracked. I didn't tell him to do that, she insisted, though my video proved otherwise. The guard, panicking, dropped the taser and started apologizing. Uncle Thomas recovered quickly and stayed composed when the police arrived, showing his credentials and explaining the situation. The officers' faces as they realized they were dealing with the State Attorney General, tossed over a homeowners association spat, were priceless. Linda and the guard, who turned out to be an unlicensed employee of her cousin's security firm, were taken for questioning. My video was submitted as evidence. The aftermath was swift. By Tuesday, Linda faced charges of filing false reports, attempted fraud, impersonating an official. She dubbed herself the Neighborhood Code Enforcement Officer, and inciting assault. The security company caught heat for hiring untrained staff and arming them with tasers. An emergency association meeting on Wednesday saw a humbled board, most claiming ignorance of Linda's actions, unanimously vote her out. She'd been pocketing fines, inventing violations, and ruling through fear for years. Uncle Thomas opted not to press charges against the guard, a clear pawn in Linda's scheme, but used the incident for a new chapter in his book on unchecked quasi-governmental power. The cherry on top? 2 weeks later, a disheveled Linda, stripped of her smugness and facing legal fees, showed up at my door. My lawyer advised said me to apologize, she muttered, each word a struggle, and offer restitution for any misunderstandings. That's generous, Uncle Thomas said from behind me, making her flinch. I'm sure the judge will note that. But I should warn you, unauthorized solicitation violates Rule 22C. He paused, then added with a faint smile, that'll be a $50 fine. The look on Linda's face as her own tactics were turned against her made every moment of association nonsense worthwhile. She stammered, then fled to her SUV, which, I noted with glee, now sported a dented door.